Hey everybody, welcome to another expert interview on DaveCooper.live, and today we have a really special guest that I am so looking forward to having on today. Somebody that I met a little over a year and a half ago, and I was invited to go to their conference, the Industrialized Wood-Based Conference up in Boston. So we're going to have Art Schmon on today. And why I'm excited about this, in that year and a half, this is somebody that I've really come to watch what he's doing, what he's talking about, and really have great respect for him. But before we bring Art on, first thing I want you to do is please hit that like and share button right now. It is so important for us to grow what we are doing in this industry so we can build better and we can build healthier. So with that said, hit that like and share button and make sure to follow us on our YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's bring Art into the show. Hey Art, how are you?
I'm well, and on behalf of IWBC and Forest Economic Advisors, it's a real pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us. In fact, why don't we start off with exactly where are you located right now?
Well, I'm actually speaking to you from Lucca, Italy. It's a small town in Tuscany, about 25 minutes from Pisa and 40 minutes from Florence.
Man, it's got to be beautiful, right?
It is beautiful. I think it would be a lot nicer, of course, if we didn't have the pandemic to deal with. But no, it is. It's a beautiful area, and the temperatures are great here. And I moved from British Columbia, so the other thing that we love about it here is there's a lot less rain here than in British Columbia. So.
Well, you know what? Some things we just have to deal with. So I think with this said, Art, let's get into who you are. I want to know everything about you from the moment you were born, and don't leave out any of the gory stuff, all the way to this moment in time. You've got about 3 to 5 minutes to do that, so go ahead.
Well, I don't know if we want to start from the moment I was born, but because that's kind of a long way back. My career actually spans 47 years, and since I graduated from college. And I don't know if your audience wants to hear the entire story, but so I'm just going to talk about a few of the highlights, at least from my perspective. So most of my career has been spent in the world of engineered lumber products. From 1974 until 1990, I managed the research, product testing, and co-managed the commercial launch of Paralam PSL. Some of you may have heard of that product. I actually named the product, with a little claim to fame. From 1991 through 97, I managed the startup of Trust Joist Macmillan's European and offering PSL, LSL, LVL, and I-joists to the European market. And for the last 11 years, I've been working as a partner with Forest Economic Advisors. Forest Economic Advisors is a company made up of 18 economists, and we do forecasts and analysis for the forest products industry, for solid wood products and the forest products industry. And we cover everything from lumber and panel boards to engineered lumber and mass timber. My job is doing quarterly forecasts and analysis on engineered lumber and more recently mass timber forecasts. And then in 2017, one of my partners, one of the founders of FEA, Paul Yonke, and I were sitting in a New Zealand pub, and we came up with the idea for IWBC, which is Industrialized Wood-Based Construction Conference. And we've had two, one in 2018, one in 2019, and I've been managing that conference right up to the present time.
Yeah. So, all right, you've been in this industry for quite some time. Right. You've done a lot of amazing things, and we are going to talk about the Industrialized Wood-Based Conference, IWBC, near the end of the show, because there's some pretty big announcements there that you guys have come up with and have grown the show with a partner. But I think first, let's talk about mass timber. This is something that is near and dear to your heart, especially at Forest Economic Advisors, and you talk about your annual forecasts and things of that nature. Where do you see this market heading, and can you give us a little breakdown on exactly what it is you forecast on?
Yeah, so mass timber includes a number of products. First of all, mass timber can be broken down into two segments: mass timber panels and then mass timber beams and columns. And so when it comes to the panels, we're talking about CLT, DLT, which is Dow laminated timber. We're talking about NLT, nail laminated timber, MPP, which is basically a veneer-based product, otherwise known as VLT, veneer laminated timber. And then there's actually an OSB mass timber panel product as well, which is being marketed in Europe, which we can talk about a little later. On the mass timber beam and column side of things, you have, of course, LVL and LSL, and the main one, of course, is Glulam, the principal beam and column product. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned Paralam, but you've got that in there as well. So that's basically an overview of the products. And I have to admit that I was a bit of a skeptic going back. If you go back 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I was a bit of a skeptic on the prospects for mass timber, because all the projects were one-offs. And I just didn't. When I say skeptic, I wasn't a skeptic in terms of, I think, what mass timber could do and its future success, but I just didn't think it was going to be a big volume business because it was focused on one-offs primarily. Right. But a lot of that has changed over the past 5 or 6 years, and now I've completely, my opinion on the mass prospects for mass timber has changed substantially, and I think it really has a great future. I think it has legs in Europe certainly, and it's gaining legs in North America. When we look at the offsite, the world of offsite construction, one of the things that I know you talk about quite a bit, Dave, is the fact that it's happening, but maybe it's not happening quite as fast as we'd like to see it happening in North America. But when it comes to the mass timber segment, it is happening quickly. The growth over the past 2 years has really been quite phenomenal in North America and in Europe. And I've got a few slides actually that I could show just to illustrate what's been going on there in the past few years. This is showing you Europe, and the red dots that you see are CLT plants with capacity over 5,000 cubic meters, and that there were about 37 plants in 2016, and now Dave, let's move to 2019. And here we see 65 plants. So in the space of 3 years, it went from 37 plants to 65 CLT plants in Europe. That is what I call dramatic expansion. And now we can go to North America, and look at North America in 2016. We had 4 plants, and we just 4 years
Canada,
later.
And you include Canada into North America, correct?
I'm including Canada in the North American picture. That's right.
Yep.
And so we go from 4 plants in 2016 to 10 plants in 2020, and there are 2 more on the way. One more, Stoltz Timber up in Montana, is coming in 2021, and also Structureland has a plant that's currently being built in Conway, Arkansas, which will be coming online in 2021. So from 4 to 12 in the space of 5 years, pretty dramatic growth.
Yeah, it really is. So what is, I'm seeing the concentration up in the, northwest corner in Canada. We see one further in the south. Are we seeing some of these other plants come on in central United States anywhere?
Yeah, the Structureland plant I mentioned is coming on stream in Conway, Arkansas. So that's going to be a very big plant with very large capacity.
Yeah.
So it's starting to happen. It's starting to really roll in the East, and I mean that's one of the things that we hope our conference will do is to help stimulate that the interest and more growth on the East Coast. But it happens that when you go back historically, most of the heavy timber construction in North America was going on the West Coast, in BC, Oregon, and Washington. So that's where mass timber got its start, and it's really been growing there much faster than anywhere else. But as I say, we can expect to see things grow to a much greater degree in the East going forward.
Yeah. And what's driving the growth in mass timber versus other areas of offsite construction?
Okay, well, I have some more slides there. I think you can throw up that kind of deal with that. You know, we can look at. I think if you go down a little click further. Oh yeah, okay. Well, okay. We'll stop right here just for a moment. This is a look at the growth for the last few years and our forecast for the next few. And you'll notice I've eliminated the y-axis. That's because the y-axis is what puts bread on my table. We sell our research, of course, and so we're not going to give away the numbers quite that easily. But I will give you this number. In 2020, from 2018 to 2019, the growth was up 110% to 108,000 cubic meters in 2019, which is really quite exceptional growth. And you see that we're showing a little bit of a dip in 2020 as a result of the pandemic. This dip may actually be overstated. I don't think there was that much of an impact actually on the demand for CLT in this year, because most CLT projects are actually in the pipeline for up to 2 years prior to execution. So, you know, the fact that we had a pandemic this year is not going to stop all of those projects. Some of them have slipped into 2021, which is one of the reasons we're showing such exceptional growth in 2021. But in any event, you can see the trend is definitely north. Next slide. So, you know, why are we bullish? Well, you know, it gets to the fact that it's number one, it's wood-based. And then why wood? Because it's more sustainable, it's quicker, it's quieter, it's cleaner, and it's cost competitive. And if you go to the next slide, Dave, I'll just amplify a little bit. So these are some of the reasons why we're bullish on the growth of mass timber. The North American building codes are moving very, very swiftly, much more so than they ever did in Europe. So despite the exceptional growth in Europe, I think that the growth in North America is going to be even faster. ICC approved model code provisions for the use of CLT buildings in the US up to 18 stories. So that's coming into effect in 2021, next year. But Oregon and Washington have already approved those changes, and Colorado may follow suit soon. In Canada, the model building codes have been changed to the effect that of allowing wood buildings up to 12 stories. And British Columbia has already adopted those changes. And then the next slide.
Yeah, but those amount of stories being built, I mean, that's kind of common ground already in places in Europe, yes?
Actually not. You know, Europe, again, as I say, is moving much more slowly than North America did in terms of code acceptance. You see very, very few tall wood buildings in Europe. You know, the vast majority, I mean, this is a ballpark estimate, but I would say well in excess of 95% of the mass timber structures in Europe are 1 to 5 stories. So it's it's basically things are moving more slowly there, because you've got separate countries, and of course getting everyone together on the same page is a little more difficult.
Right.
So, and then moving ahead, you know, the other thing that's happening, and this is something I know that's a favorite topic of yours, Dave. The other thing that's happening is that state and provincial governments are providing strong backing for mass timber. And I know you'd like to see the same thing happening with offsite construction in general, but it is happening for mass timber, particularly in BC, Washington, Oregon, and California. You're seeing a lot of government backing in those states, and in Europe, you see quite a bit of government backing as well behind mass timber. So the other thing that's going on, and this is kind of interesting. You know, people think that more capacity means more competition and less business for the players. But actually, it's the reverse with new products. I watched this happen with engineered lumber products, and I think we're going to see this happen with CLT as well. As you add more capacity and as you add different companies, you give architects more choice, basically. And architects like competitive bidding. They like to have lots of choices. It makes them feel a lot more comfortable particularly around a new technology like CLT. And next, mass timber design and systems are becoming more cost efficient. And really, these last two bullets you can kind of blend together. The reason they're becoming more cost efficient is because there's been a big push toward building platforms with kits of parts. And so, in other words, you've got more standardization coming into the industry. And that standardization is making mass timber more cost competitive with steel and concrete. So I think, and then the last, I'll just show these last two slides very quickly, Dave, because I think they kind of tell, they also tell the story of the kind of growth we're seeing.
Okay.
So this first slide is, this is a slide that we put together on the basis of data from Woodworks. And what it shows is the number of projects, the number of mass timber projects completed or started since 2010. This is CLT plus DLT plus NLT projects from 2010. So that's over a 10-year period, 186 projects. Next slide. And now you see the number of projects that are in design right now as we speak. In other words, 328 in design right now, versus, go back if you will, versus 186 over a 10-year period. So you can see that things are really starting to go north in terms of mass timber growth in the U.S. Typically, these projects can be in design for a couple of years. They can be in the pipeline for a couple of years. So you could divide that 328 number by 2 and come to kind of an annual figure. And the annual figure now, in other words, is equivalent to the last 10 years. So in aggregate. So we're seeing tremendous growth, and we think that growth is going to continue.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you this then. I'm going to take a minute to get on Dave Cooper's soapbox with you here for a second, going back to how do we get more people involved? How do we get more people to accept offsite, whether it's mass timber, modular, panelized, SIPs? And you made a comment about how, the mass timber industries really has gotten a lot of the government agencies involved to start looking at it and start using it. What are they doing differently than the rest of the offsite world, if you know?
Well, I think, Dave, mass timber, as you may recall, when it first hit the airwaves about 5 years ago, it got an awful lot of press, and it's still getting press. So there's been a tremendous amount of, I think there's a lot more awareness of what's going on in mass timber than probably any other segment of the offsite construction industry. I mean, you see articles in, New York Times, and every publication you can think of has published articles about mass timber projects, and they're quite spectacular. I mean, a lot of them are reference projects. You have the UBC Rock Commons building, 18 stories in Vancouver, went up in 9 weeks. And you have, many, many projects that have really gained a lot of attention. More recently, you may have heard that Structurlam, while they're building their plant in Arkansas, their first customer is going to be Walmart. Right. And Walmart's new head office in Arkansas is going to be mass timber. 30,000 cubic meters of over 1 million cubic feet of material will go into that project. And so I think it's kind of I think that the publicity has had a lot to do with its growth, but there's another thing also, and that is that I think a lot of people say that the environment at the end of the day is not all that important to developers. The developers, I mean, they'll give lip service to the environment, but at the end of the day, it's all about cost. I don't think that's as true anymore. I think we're beginning to see more developers, more architects and engineers who are very concerned about sustainability. And I think, let's face it, mass timber consumes an awful lot of carbon. It sequesters carbon. And so I think that's been also one of the big, that's provided a lot of tailwind, I think, to the mass timber movement. And then lastly, I think that mass timber has become far more cost competitive. And it is indeed today cost competitive with steel and concrete in many different types of structures.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, you can see just with the growth charts that you're showing us, it's going to become more cost competitive as more players come onto the market. Hopefully that's going to also help drive the cost of, the affordability of it down. And as we have more manufacturers of the product throughout the US, it's going to reduce shipping and handling and everything else to make it more accessible. Yes.
That's right. And the other thing, it's interesting when you step back and look at what's happened to mass timber in the past few years in North America. You've got some really big money behind mass timber in North America now. I mean, I think people are aware of Sidewalk Labs, which is a sister company to Google, owned by Alphabet. And they don't make mass timber per se, but they are in the process of planning a plant which will be doing mass timber components. These components will be things like floor assemblies that include mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And, so in other words, a lot more of the building process off-site in mass timber than was the case before. And then, of course, you've got Katerra that everyone is familiar with on the West Coast with one of the largest mass timber plants in the world in Washington State. And you've got, a number of big Walmart. Not only is Walmart building their head office, their new head office complex out of mass timber, but they actually invested in Structurlam as well in the process. So you've got some really big companies with big money coming in behind this. And I think that's important too, because, this, as you know, these plants basically, they don't get up to capacity overnight. This takes time. It takes working capital. It takes patient investment, basically.
Sure it does. Sure it does. Well, I mean, that you're saying it, we are actually going to have Structurlam on Hardy Wenzel this Wednesday. So put it on your calendar, everybody, if you're interested in seeing that show. That is our product spotlight this week, Wednesday at 1:00. And you're right. We look forward to hearing about Walmart's involvement in this, if they're willing to talk about it. And we're seeing players like Amazon, Walmart, Google. A lot of them are starting to invest money in offsite construction, whether it's mass timber or some other form.
That's right. And Mike, just while we're talking about big companies, Microsoft also building big parts of its new offices in mass timber as well.
Are they?
And again, I mean, and of course, everyone wants to be perceived to be environmentally sensitive and sustainable as well. It's good. Right. It makes for good business. So.
Sure. But I mean, it makes for good everything all around. It's healthier people and healthier work environments. And you're right. The mass timber buildings are beautiful. Like it makes for a nice place to come and work.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure your party will go into all the biophilic benefits as well. Mass timber, but they're just, when you really start to look at all of the benefits of moving in that direction, they are many. And I think the more this awareness occurs, I think the faster we're going to see this go. Yeah. And we're quite bullish.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited for it. I think the industry needs different ways of thinking and moving forward. And I think we need more sustainability. And this is just one key to moving all that. So why don't we take a moment, Art, and say hello to some people? What do you think?
Hey, that's a good idea.
So, all right, everybody, hit that like and share button right now. Let's go to the comments and just say hi to some people tuning in. What is happening, George Rhyme? And good morning from Shorefoot Foundations in Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you ever watched our building science show, Art, but Prudence Vieira, good afternoon from sunny Philly. And she has I think looks like some questions down below. We'll get to that in a second. You may know this character. There's not too many like him. Got good old Jerry McCahey from Integra.
One of my favorite.
Buongiorno, Art from California.
Yeah.
I wonder what that sounds like in an Irish accent.
What? You're talking from California.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, here's from Prudence. Do you see differences in growth between products from PEFC/FSC sources and sources that practice non-sustainable forest management? How much of the growth do you think is driven by embodied carbon concerns? What are primary drivers?
So yeah, I think this is a really good question. I think there's no question that initially there was a lot of sort of sex appeal around mass timber, and I think everyone wanted to get on the bandwagon. Now that things have been going for several years, people are beginning to really drill down into some of the assumptions and they're asking different kinds of questions. And certainly the question about sustainability goes largely to forest management. And this is something that we have a special session in IWBC this year, which I really encourage you to come to register for, because this session deals with how green is mass timber, and we have a bunch of experts, 4 experts who are going to be discussing this. It'll be a panel discussion, and I can't go too deep into the subject myself. I'm not an expert on it, but I will say that I think that the growth of mass timber is largely going to be dependent on how well the industry addresses the issue of sourcing its lumber from sustainable forests. That's a very important part of the picture. So it's not just sequestering carbon; it's where did that carbon come from, and how well are those forests being managed, and so that we can continue to grow this industry responsibly.
For sure. She had a follow-up on that as well. Let me put that up there real quick. Do you feel the market understands differences in embodied carbon of mass timber products dependent on forest management practices? How can we get the word out so that increasing use of mass timber does not equate to increasing loss of forest habitat and biodiversity? Yeah,
well, again, I would have the same answer. Again, I'm not an expert. I can't address in detail that question, but I think that if you come to IWBC this year, those questions will be answered for you. And this is a live, by the way, this is a live session we have on how green is mass timber, so that you will be able to ask your questions to these experts who are really focused on it. And this is not going to be any kind of whitewashing of mass timber. This is going to be a serious discussion of the pros and cons.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, Prudence, when you look at the IWB site, and we're going to put that up there, and you see who the speakers are, maybe that'd be somebody to talk further on down the road. So we'll look at that for building science. All right. We also have Will Leverett. Good afternoon from Georgia, he says. All right. Hey, we're getting closer to you. Henry Mickelberg from France. Do you think the mandatory 50% mass timber requirements mandated for the 2024 Paris Olympics is achievable from a supply chain capacity perspective, and B, act as a catalyst for greater government mandated timber use?
Well, all I can say is that there's lots of capacity. So I don't think capacity is going to be an issue in Europe. And with, as I mentioned, 65 plants and more coming along, we do a quarterly forecast service, as I mentioned, for mass timber, and we try to get ahead of the game in terms of the plants that are coming on stream, because typically there are announcements 1 or 2 years in advance for these plants. But no, I don't see any problem with capacity as we move toward 2024. So
perfect. All right, everybody, listen, we are on with Art Schmon, and now we are going to step into phase 2 of our conversation. We're going to talk about the Industrialized Wood-Based Conference, typically live in Boston, at least it was last year, but this year it has gone virtual. And Art, why don't you tell us about some of the changes we're going to see? And I'm going to tell you, stick around for this, because I looked at what's happening. I think this is going to be pretty spectacular and be a big difference from what a lot of other people are doing.
Thanks, Dave. Well, we're very excited about what's happening this year. So just to step back for a moment, our mission is to build awareness of the benefits of wood-based industrialized construction and to educate. And that's really the mission behind our conference, which has traditionally been held in Boston. And so a big part of our target audience is architects, engineers, builders, and developers. The partnership, what happened this year basically was that we have developed a partnership with ABX, which is Architecture Boston Expo. And Architecture Boston Expo, just to give you the background, is the annual trade show for the American Institute of Architects in New England. It's been going on for 36 years, and it typically attracts an audience of 8,000 attendees, including in round numbers 4,000 architects, 800 engineers, 400 builders, 250 developers. Those are round numbers, but that's about what they typically attract. Now, their show was also held in November last year, and they paid us a visit. And when they came over and we started discussing, we both realized that there could be some real synergy between these two conferences. And so we struck a partnership deal in January of this year. And the joint conference, that is the ABX IWBC conference, was to have been held at the Boston Convention Center. And then along came the pandemic. And in July, we made the decision to go virtual. But as I mentioned, we're very excited about the partnership because I think this partnership with ABX is going to bring thousands of architects, engineers, and builders and developers to the world of offsite construction. Many of these architects and engineers will not have had any exposure to offsite construction. They will now, and it's in the thousands. So we're excited. I mean, this is going to be also a big bonus for our exhibitors, who will have literally 10 times the number of architects at this conference as they will find at any other conference that they might have exhibited in North America.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking from experience and being there last year, Art and I was privileged enough to interview you and some others, and we're going to put some of those interviews out. But some of the greatest feedback that I've heard, especially during the interviews, and I think that you've also heard, was, how informative this conference is compared to others. Like, it really gets to the meat and potatoes. You go there and there's just some of the best speakers in the world that are keynoting at this conference. And one we just had on, Mark Farmer, is going to be a keynote there.
Yeah, Mark will be, everyone, I think most of you know Mark Farmer, and I think you had him on your show, Dave. He will be addressing modern methods of construction and what he sees ahead post-pandemic. We've got, I think everyone's aware of the superb work that McKinsey has done on construction labor productivity in terms of the papers they published. Well, the lead author on those papers is Gernot Strube, and he's the lead keynote speaker this year. And his topic is predicting the next tectonic shift, disruptive changes in construction. So that should be very interesting. And I've seen glimpses of this presentation. It's going to be fantastic. And our second keynote is Kareem Khalifa from the Google sister company Sidewalk Labs. And he's going to be talking about offsite mass timber construction. And, he's also very big on mass timber construction, particularly for tall wood buildings. And so he'll be dealing with that. And then finally, we have our fourth keynote speaker, who's John Klein. And John has just started up a company called Generate Technologies. And what they've done is they've developed a generative design tool, which he will be talking about and hopefully showing us at the conference. And I think that generative design is a fascinating technology that really holds tremendous potential for wood-based design and construction, both mass timber and light frame.
Sure. Well, it's predictable, right? I mean, with the numbers, with the generative design. And I think that's what makes it, easier to use in a sense, in an application like the generative design, because, did I say degenerative design? Generative design. So degenerate, that's what I was growing up, Art. But it really is, right? This gets into parametric design. And when you're using, and this will bring us into another part of this conversation, when you're using better quality material, lumber that's more accurate, that can be used, you can really get down to the fine details, even in programs, data, software, when it's predictable. And I mean, I think some of this is coming from that, having better lumber, correct? That's
right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, no, that's right. Mass timber is very precise to the millimeter, and and so it lends itself to that kind of software certainly better. But there's another factor here, and that is that when you look at for example the mass timber business, as fast as it's growing today, I would venture to say that most of the mass timber structures in the U.S. today that were sourced from North American mass timber producers, most of those structures, have basically been designed by about 24 firms. And so, in other words, the vast majority of architectural firms in North America haven't had experience with mass timber. And of course, the universities aren't helping to a great degree because there aren't a lot of university courses as you go around the U.S. in mass timber design. And so one of the useful aspects, I think, of generative design software is that it has the potential to put all of that experience in a software package in the hands of these relatively inexperienced architects and engineers, so that they will be able to come up with optimal designs, competitive designs with their steel and concrete counterparts.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's just going to help accelerate the adoption of wood into the market, which is of course our thing. We're wood people, so.
All right. So, I mean, you're just making my job too easy today, Art, and I'm going to tell you why, right? Because, again, getting back to what you just said with the IWBC and your partnership with ABX, bringing in all these designers and architects, and this allows them to get up to speed or be able to use this technology. And I think this is what's key, and this is what our industry is missing, not just in mass timber, but in offsite construction in general, is a hub for learning for the architects and designers that are already in this space. Where do they go? Where do they get this information? So we can take all their beautiful design minds and bring them into the structural side of what we do. That's
right. I mean, just to go back to generative design for a moment, I don't want to flog the point, but I think I'm not sure if all of your audience knows what generative design actually is, but in conceptual terms, instead of having a computer assist you in designing a structure, generative design is where you tell the computer what you want to accomplish, and the computer does the rest. The computer does the design. So you provide, as you pointed out earlier, Dave, the parameters. So, for example, I want a 12-story building. I want it in mass timber. I want to minimize street shadows. I want to minimize environmental impact, minimize costs. I want it, and so on. And the generative design program takes it from there and actually designs the structure. So I think now it's early days for generative design, and it remains to be seen how quickly this catches on. But certainly the potential is enormous for it. So sure. We're very excited about that.
So are you saying this could make me an architect?
Possibly, Dave. I mean, anything.
Anything's possible these days, right? I love it. But listen, that's where the world's going. And you look at the phone industry, the automobile industry, they're leading the way with new ideas and new technologies. They're not waiting for somebody to say, hey, you should do this. Right. It's right. Kind of a different approach. So I think it's coming to this. I think, with everybody out there, and the data and you get the big data companies, you get the Googles, the Amazons, the Walmart, they got a lot of really smart minds that are really looking at this stuff. Even Dell's interested in looking at this stuff. So yeah. I love it. Jerry McCaughey made a comment. There aren't many third level courses in offsite construction, period, in the U.S.
Right.
And he's absolutely right. But I will use it to plug something because I believe in it, not for any other reason. But I don't know if you even heard, Art, Stone Pile College. They just opened up in Tennessee. It's an online course. It's all around offsite construction, and it's geared to learn the way that construction folks learn. You can get an associate's, a bachelor's, or a master's degree.
Wow.
In offsite construction, and it's really going to be an amazing course. It's opened up globally, and they're going about it differently. You don't even need to take SAT scores. If you have a high school diploma, you're in prison, and you're coming out, and you have a degree or diploma. All you have to do is write a letter onto why you would like to learn about offsite, and they review it and see if you're a good fit for the school. So it's really a cool thing.
Fantastic, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of Jerry McCaughey, I mean, Jerry. There are just so many. I've learned so much from him over the past few years, just listening to his presentations and speaking to him. And I think that what he's doing in California is just fantastic. We've been watching Integra with great interest, and I think he's gone about it exactly the right way. And of course, this isn't his first rodeo. He's been through this before. So wish him the best of luck.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with, as I would always say about Jerry. So he had one more comment. We'll put that up. We need more of those courses. Kudos to them. All right, perfect. So, all right, Art. I know our time is limited, and I think this has been an awesome conversation. Why don't you give us just your 2 cents on what do you predict here in the next year or two coming out of COVID? You think we're gonna see some more exponential growth in mass timber? You think it's going to continue like you're forecasting?
Well, it's interesting. Just let me spend a couple of minutes because I think I can answer part of that question by making you aware of another session that we're having at IWBC.
Go ahead.
And it actually includes Jerry McCaughey. We're going to have a session that answers that question, Dave. It's how will the pandemic affect the trajectory for offsite construction? That's the session title. And the people who will be in that session are Jerry McCaughey, CEO of Integra, Vaughn Buckley, the CEO of Volumetric Building Companies, Tom Hardiman, the Executive Director of the Modular Building Institute, and Evan Smith, the President of Place Taylor. So this is another live panel discussion, which will get right to the question you're asking. And rather than my polluting you with my ideas on this, I think why not listen to the real experts and come to the conference. So
I don't know any of those guys. No, perfect. Hey, listen, they are experts. They've been in the industry. They've been around the block. Vaughn's doing some amazing things. I mean, I call Vaughn an overachiever. I just don't know how he has time to pull it all together. He's an amazing person. So
I'll just give one quick opinion though, just a general opinion. I think that the pandemic could well be another inflection point. I think that this is going to once again boost offsite construction prospects for offsite construction, because I mean it's really pretty simple. I mean, I think people are going to be far safer in a factory environment where social distancing can be maintained. I think that you're going to have better organization of what goes on the job site in terms of trades and the sequencing of trades, so that again we don't have piles of people piling into a job site all at once. I think it's going to. I think that the pandemic is going to. I think it's going to lead people toward more offsite construction in the near future.
Yes, and I agree with you. It happened in the '08 crash, and I hate to say it, but we saw a big increase of interest, between '08 and now in regards to offsite, because so many trades left the business and young labor's not there. And I agree with you for those same exact. So. Yep. I think the same way you're thinking. I think good things always come out of something bad. I've always learned that, there's always a lesson learned or something that comes out of it. And, it's a good thing to focus on those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So for sure. All right. So, hey, listen, one more shout out here. Greg Ugaldi, great job, Art and Dave. Greg Ugaldi, the immediate past chairman of the NAHB. I always got to throw Greg up there. It's great having his support.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you.
On such a high level. So, Art, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really do appreciate it, for sure.
It's been my pleasure, Dave. Anytime.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody else, listen, before you go, we have Hardy Wenzel, Chief Executive Officer at Structural Lamb Mass Timber Corporation, on the show this Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about all the great things they are doing. They are a leader in this industry, so much that Walmart even thought so, and Walmart put their own dollars behind them. So this is going to be a great conversation on Wednesday. Art, I know you know Hardy, so I'm sure you're going to be tuning in and listening to that conversation as well. So I couldn't have asked for a better guest today, Art. You made my job easy, and that makes me really happy.
It's been a pleasure, Dave. Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. All right, everybody. This is Dave Cooper Live, expert interview, Art Schmon. Art, you have a wonderful day. Join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock with Jennifer Cooper on Building Modular. And then don't forget to tune in every day at 1 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for joining us today. Hang tight, Art. I'll come with you back to you right after the outro. Bye, everyone.
Okay. Thanks very much.